it's very rare that we get somebody involved in professional boxing that actually genuinely feels for the boxers. As we've seen the great transitionary move to a lot of fights being happening in Saudi Arabia. And as you know, Saudi Arabia got that Arab money. Really, they've got the Arab money. But in all fairness, the man who is working with the Saudi royal family is this man who we're going to introduce right now. So, in the famous words of Dream It, Believe It, Become It, come on up. We bring in former world champion kickboxer and now the head of Skill Challenge Boxing, the director, Mr. Amer Abdullah.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you, Spencer.
No, walaikum salam, Aki. Walaikum salam. You know what? I can't keep up with you, my friend, because it seems like you're everywhere, even when you're standing still.
I'm trying to follow in your steps and follow your lead, brother. That's what I'm trying to do.
My lead? Nah, you know what? I just want to keep that. I want to have a straight nose like yours, right? I'm saying I'm honored because I've known you for a hot minute now. You've always been that kind of genuine guy, especially in dealing with Badou Jack, who's my brother. I love Badou, and yeah, to see just how far you two have come together is truly it's a blessing to see, to sit down and see. It's like everyone says, "Oh, Spencer, you got a mad black book," and I'm saying I don't think there's too many people equal to me on my black book, but you're up there. You're up there with a black book. You're up there. I ain't gonna lie to you. You're up there.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you mentioning, the relationship between Badou and I. A lot of interviews that I do, most of the interviews, rather, I should say, that I do, very few people acknowledge that kind of relationship. And I think you saw it firsthand when we were in the UK from back in 2016, 2017, and how it's evolved over time. And Badou is not an athlete that I represent. He's my brother. And that's the relationship that I have with all of the guys that I work with and all of the guys now the Skill Challenge Promotions works with. So it's important to me not to look at these guys like a business transaction or as a business commodity, but more of, man, these are my guys. And after their careers are done, I want them to be living with their families, with their health, with their finances. And if fame comes along the way, great. But one of the first questions I always ask them is, what's the most important thing to you? Because for me, my objective is to get you out of the sport as healthy and as financially sound as possible.
Well, it's like we have many promoters in the world, right? And I know, like you were doing like smaller shows over in Vegas, a lot of kickboxing shows that you were doing as well. I remember, like back in the day when you was doing that. I think the first time I met you was like 2014 maybe, at Floyd's gym, right?
Wow.
I remember seeing you in there. I was doing bits for Sky TV then, and then we never really kept the link. And then a mutual friend introduced both of us in 2018 when Badou came to the UK, and we did some bits with me, you, and Lennox Lewis. And I remember standing in the ring with Badou Jack, right, doing this fight breakdown. I was standing in the ring with Badou Jack and thinking of the size of him. And I said, "Bro, you ain't no light heavyweight, bro." Seriously, you're not no light heavyweight. So to see Badou go on now to become world champion for the WBC as a cruiserweight must give you like a tremendous honor. Must do.
Well, it does, and there's a lot of things that a lot of boxes that Badou checks as a person, as a champion, as an ambassador to boxing, for me personally, as an ambassador to Islam and as a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah.
And Badou, I wish that every person, and mind you, most of the guys are very much in line with Badou because I can thank God, alhamdulillah, at this point. Actually, throughout my whole career, I pick and chose who I wanted to work with. But I wish they were all like Badou. He's just a beautiful person. He's got a great soul. He's genuinely a good man. He's genuine. Like my father used to, Allah, may God have mercy on his soul, used to consider Badou as a son to him. That was his fourth son. And he used to always ask about myself, my little brothers, and then he'd ask about Badou. And that went so far for me. I mean, it was so genuine because he is a genuine guy. And you see the things that he just came back from Gambia again, visiting another orphanage, and with his foundation, and just as a person, as a human, and as a champion, man, he's a dog. Fought 8 world champions back to back, 3 division world champions, super middle, light heavy, cruiser. Leonard Ellerby said it one time, and it was perfect. And I steal Leonard's quote: "Is he's a promoter's dream. Like, he's the kind of fighter that you dream about having. No drama, no issues. Will fight anybody. Is just a genuinely great guy, great ambassador for the sport, and a great ambassador for everything that he gets involved with."
I would say there's a lot of similarities. I would say, I'm a historian, so right, but there's a lot of similarities between Badou Jack and Bernard Hopkins.
Sure.
Meaning that there's not a lot of sizzle, but there's plenty steak with him,
Well
right?
said.
Yeah, plenty. Reason being is because he's the type of guy, when you fight him, win, lose or draw, he takes your soul. Something is missing from you after you fight that brother. Because you look at the guys who have boxed him, they don't really go on to do great things after. George Groves was very, very fortunate. But I'm telling you, he takes something away from you.
They're never the same guys after Badou fights. And I don't want to name fighters specifically, but the big fights that he's had, the fight afterward, they're just not the same. And that's why, he's got dubbed the name the Ripper. Is he just, rips these guys, he shreds these guys, and he breaks them down. And even the guys that he had such controversial decisions with, and I don't want to go as far as robbery, because robberies insinuate criminal activity. I would say that, the poor decisions or the controversial decisions that he's had, those guys are never the same. But imagine if all of those controversial decisions, Spencer, imagine if all of those were in Badou's favor. And it would be a 5, 6, 7-time world champion at this point. Financially, the landscape would have changed. And I remember I was in the ring with him after one of the decisions, and he looked at me and he goes, "Alhamdulillah." And I go, "Badou, just don't overreact." He goes, "Bro, what am I going to do? Alhamdulillah, it is what it is." Like, he just takes it like a genuine gentleman, as a genuine, I don't know if I would be able to control myself like that, because in boxing, as you know, your worth is based off of your last fight. Having won a world title, imagine what that does to your purse the next fight. And the one fight I will mention is the Pascal fight, is, the rematch, which, if you look at the first fight and you look at their corner, and I have a great relationship with Pascal's team, and you look at our corner is celebrating their high fives, like we can't wait to be crowned champion. Their corner looks at like, man, we just lost the title. It looks like a morgue over there. And then
they're very dejected. They were very, very dejected. But it is what it is. This is boxing. Yeah, it is what it is.
And the reason I brought that fight up is the rematch, where I believe Badou would have been vindicated. He ended up popping for 5, 6, 7, whatever it was, steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, and Badou was never able to get that opportunity to get back at that. So at the end of the day, listen, we can keep going on and on and on and on. Badou is a great person. He's a great ambassador to, like I said, to the sport, to Islam. And for me, I'm enjoying watching him at this stage of his career become a great businessman. Also, when he was here in Saudi, this week, we talked about some other investments and some businesses that he's involved with, and some real estate and portfolios that he's involved. He's doing very well for himself, and I'm very proud of him. And I'm very proud that he's in the position that he's in.
Alhamdulillah. So, to spin it now, it seems like, Mr. Abdullah, that you're doing a Don King in reverse, because he had the hair, you ain't got no hair, right? It seems that way to me, right? You're not really out there. You're not loud and gregarious and that kind of thing. You're doing it totally in the reverse. You're doing it totally in reverse, simply because it must be a massive honor that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would appoint you to become their director. That is absolutely massive. It's massive to me because I use you as a boss. He's my friend. I'll pick up the phone, right? But that must be massive. What kind of honor do you feel has been bestowed on your head?
I'm not sure that that question can be answered in the time frame that we have, or that I can actually depict my gratitude and relay, what kind of honor and how prestigious and the kind of responsibility that's on my shoulders. But first and foremost, I have to thank, His Highness Prince Khalid bin Abdulaziz, before even nominating me and choosing me for this role, but for starting this vision. Of course, he gets upset at me when I say vision, but this mission of his, of not even so much changing boxing, but reforming boxing and adding so much more highlight and sizzle to boxing. He's generally and genuinely a very focused, goal-driven individual that thinks of something and doesn't hesitate to go after it and get it. He doesn't listen to any objections. He doesn't listen to any toxicity. He doesn't listen to how it can't be done. The only thing he focuses on is how can we get this done and when can we get this done. And that kind of leadership, when you have that, it gives you the kind of confidence also. I'm a very confident person by nature, in every facet of my life, but it's great to have that. And I always say that an army of sheep led by a lion will always defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. The leadership is so important. And when you have that kind of a leadership and you have that kind of steadfastness to get and attain those kinds of goals, it's massive. So first and foremost, I think a lot of credit has to be given to Prince Khalid. And he's a very quiet guy. He does not like the limelight. He does not like the spotlight. And on the contrary, when I tell him, please, let's get on the panel and let's talk, and he's like, Amir, please, let the fighters have the stage. Let the fighters have that. I'm trying to get him a lot more involved in being, more of a focal point in boxing. But he loves to be behind the scenes, and he's a magician behind. I mean, he's a wizard behind those curtains. He makes things happen, and a lot of people don't know how powerful he really is in the sport of boxing. That doesn't take away from all the other great promoters that are there, the big five or the big six that are out there and doing great things for boxing. Prince Khalid's not trying to overtake them. He's trying to combine them and work with everybody and put on the biggest fights. So when you saw, the fights that we've done in the kingdom, they include promoters from all different, areas, all different levels. And it's just under the Skill Challenge Promotions banner. So I guess what I'm saying is his vision is absolutely amazing. That's really what I'm so humbled by being a part of this. Ever since I got into the business of boxing, it was always about being in a position like this. Of course, he's backed by the Ministry of Sport, Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki, who's been a phenomenal supporter of his from day one and continues to be, and what puts us in this position that we're at. So when you have a team like that, there's no limits to anything. It's just a matter of what are we going to do next. But it's genuinely an honor. I'm very proud, as an Arab, as a Muslim, as a proud American citizen also, that I'm a part of a beautiful organization like this that is really building a new epicenter for boxing.
I would say now that this is happening on the visions, and I know like you're a person, you know, is it like, what was it? KRS-One, Bad Boys Move in Silence, right? And you that's how you're doing like some stealth mode kind of things, because like everybody was sitting down saying, right, who's the signing? I swear blind, I said, nah, it's Deontay Wilder, right? It's Deontay Wilder. I was sitting down, I was waiting for the drum roll, and then it came out. It came out on Saturday at 7 o'clock in the UK for us. Was it 11 o'clock Eastern for Americans? See, I was listening to everything that you say, right? So and it was announced, and it was Usyk, right? How has that changed the precipice of boxing by you signing Usyk?
Well, look, but as far as the confidentiality goes, and I just want to touch on that because it's very important, especially in our sport. I believe when there's negotiations, I believe when there's talks, they should be all behind closed doors until you have something concrete. And social media has ruined, I don't want to say ruined, but has really influenced a lot of ways that people do business. For me to text you or call you or email you with an offer, for you, if it's ever turned around and said publicly, it's probably not the best way to do business. I prefer not to do things that way. And until deals are done and until things are signed, everybody should keep everything quiet. And with the Usyk thing, the reason that nothing leaked is because Alex Krusek from K2, Igis Klimas, and Alexander Usyk are absolute professionals. There's no reason to leak any of that, and that's the way it should be. But as far as how the Usyk signing changed the landscape of boxing. Look, let's just talk about it because everybody wants to talk about it. I always say that there's three things today that I hate talking about publicly, and that's religion, politics, and the undisputed fight. But it keeps popping up everywhere. I mean, everywhere anybody wants to go is what's happening with Fury Usyk, what's happening with Fury Usyk, what's happening with Fury Usyk. Why didn't it happen in Saudi? Why didn't it happen there? And I want to be very clear that when I came into the role in November, that at that stage, the fight there was already talks ahead of time. There were already people involved with that fight. So I took a sideline seat and I didn't want to get involved with it at that stage because I would have just slowed it all down. What will happen though, moving forward, is that we'll start getting involved with the talks and we'll see how things can come together. Everybody wants to see that fight. Look, I know people, and I read the comments, I read things, and I know people are all saying, "Oh, Fury doesn't want the fight." I believe Fury does want the fight. I believe that George and Frank do want the fight. I know that Usyk and his team want the fight. I don't think that there's an issue or a reason why this fight can't happen as long as you have the right people sitting at the table. And on my side, I'm telling you the offer is going to be better than it will be anywhere. Then I think that the deal makes sense. So I can't imagine that fight not happening. So, and the reason why I alluded to that fight is because that's the fight that everybody wants to see. And Usyk coming aboard Skill Challenge Promotions, we are now more eager than ever, especially because he's under the banner, to be able to deliver that fight and make that fight happen. But we look forward to sitting down with Tyson Fury, with his team, whoever that may be, George, Frank, and anybody else that's involved on his side, meaning his father, before people start jumping to conclusions that aren't there. That's his close-knit team. It's Tyson Fury, it's Frank Warren, it's George Warren, and if John Fury is involved, then that's the team that we sit down with. But I don't know why there would be any reason to speculate otherwise than the undisputed's happening.
Okay, because recently we had John Fury on the show, and John Fury was being, because at the time it was kind of being thrown around that it was going to be Usyk versus Wilder, and I think John Fury was saying like we were looking to make that fight, having that fight in the UK. Tyson Fury was offered Usyk 30%, which Usyk accepted, and then something in negotiations broke down. It didn't happen. Now him being with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and being signed on the Skill Challenge with you at the helm of this as the boxing brain, I believe that he'll get way better than the 30%, whatever was offered. And I think now that fight, with you guys being behind it, we can have a throwback to 1986 when we had HBO. And I know you remember because we're at the same age group, when HBO did the Undisputed tournament. And we had Larry Holmes, Pinkman Thomas, Michael Spinks, a young kid from Brownsville called Mike Tyson, Trevor Burbeck, and they threw these guys all in the mix. Tony Tucker was in it as well, and Buster Douglas. And they threw all of these men in the mix, and it worked out for us to have just one undisputed heavyweight champion. Now we flip the page. The last undisputed heavyweight champion was Lennox Lewis. We've gone some 23, 24 years without having an undisputed champion. I think that's sacrilege, especially like the helm is meant to be the heavyweight division and everything germinates from there. It's been changed since Sugar Ray Leonard in the 80s. It's definitely been changed since Floyd Mayweather, that the big purses are only aligned to the heavyweight division. I think that's what's been missing. And I think the weight to responsibility on Skill Challenge, on Prince Khalid, on yourself, I would say, like, could you make that happen again? And just me as a boxing fan, as a historian, I would love to see that.
Well, I'll say this too. We have a big plan over the next 3 years to solve that problem. And I'm not at liberty to be able to disclose those plans, but I'll tell you that I think that boxing will be, I don't want to use the word indebted, but they will be very delighted to see how we can start having a, I don't even want to say unified or undisputed, but a recognized champion. And I always allude to, and I use the example of the UFC and how they did things right. And it could have been, on the tail end of learning how boxing did it wrong and eliminating the, the challenges of having to do it that way and creating one promotion, one belt, one network that eliminates the need for having to go back and forth, taking years to make fights, not being able to deliver fights. It almost slipped away the Spence Crawford fight because of that. The Mayweather Pacquiao fight, I always use that as the prime example of how long that take, the biggest fight in history, how long it took to make. So I think that the undisputed and having one recognized champion and the demand on the fight, I think that indicates how much people really want to have one recognized champion. It's almost a cry to say, listen, this is what we want to see. Where you look at 130, 135, you've got 4 or 5 world champions that are there, and who's recognized, who's not, who's the best, which sanctioned body. So I love undisputed fights. I love, like the Haney Lomachenko fight. There's one guy that's the champion in that division. I love, the middleweight and the super middleweight. There's one unified champion or undisputed champion. It should be that way.
And hopefully, you guys at School Challenge will be doing your utmost best to make this materialize. It's like you haven't really put on that many shows, or School Challenge hasn't put on that many shows. That you put on massive events. You haven't put on that many shows. So would this mean that you're going to put on a lot more shows pertaining to boxing out in Saudi Arabia?
Fair question, and true, accurate. In 2019, we had Clash of the Dunes rematch. Then 2022, we had Usyk Joshua 2. And then 23, we had the hybrid card of Paul Fury with Jack Makabu on it. But, I say this, and I say it all the time, is the pandemic worked in my favor, because the vision that Prince Khalid had was after 2019 to start rolling out 2, 3, 4 shows a year and to start building the infrastructure here, where the pandemic sidelined all of that. So it wasn't well after the pandemic and well after everything subsided that everybody was able to get back into arenas, guys getting back into the gyms, everything kind of becoming safe. And it gave me the opportunity to be in this position and to step in as the director of boxing. But I will tell you that will change, and that there will be several fights out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the partner countries that we're working with under the Skill Challenge Promotions banner to start doing multiple fights a year. And some of them, a lot of them will be this big, massive stage. And a lot of them will be up and coming guys also, some of the B-level guys, some of the C-level guys, to be able to add a little bit of variety and to be able to build the stage to get them to that big stage. But 3 fights in 3 years is accurate, but that's also because or 4 years, because we faced a pandemic. So, but now that that's over and done with, and now that everybody's in line and the team is growing and the promotion is now starting to pick back up, you're going to see a lot more events coming out of the Kingdom and under the Skill Challenge Promotions banner.
So there was talk about massive talk about Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder happening in the Kingdom. Can you rain any light on that? I know you don't want to divulge too much, but any light that can you shed on that first, please?
Of course. Is there interest in the fight? And the answer is yes. The problem is, Spencer, and I say this, and I've said it before, boxing runs on a 6-month schedule. You've got AJ that may want to be active. I can't tell AJ, hey, listen, Eddie and Freddie, listen, you should sideline AJ until December. Here we are in June, and his last fight was 2 months ago, so he's going to stay sitting under on the bench for 8 months. That's a long time for a fighter, especially one that's used to fighting 2-3 times a year. Same thing with Tyson Fury, the Fury Usyk fight. We're talking about December that we possibly could do something here, and that's the timeline. But Usyk has a mandatory in Dubois. Fury is talking about possibly doing something and getting involved in something, July, August. So I can't really say, but what I will tell you is there is interest in Wilder Joshua. Both parties, and I talk to Shelley Finkel daily. I have a good personal relationship with Shelley, but the business side of it, they're totally on board. Al's on board. I know Eddie and AJ are on board. Freddie's on board. Everybody wants that fight to happen. Again, in my estimation, this fight should happen, but I can't until you have an official statement coming from Skill Challenge Promotion or coming from Prince Khalid directly. It's just interest in the fight. There is nothing, and I will tell you right now, the numbers that are thrown out are fictitious. There have not been any formal offers made. There has not been any decisive action made stating that that fight is a done deal. We'll tell you that there's interest in making that fight, and as time progresses, we'll see what happens. What if AJ fights Dillian White and if that fight materializes and he gets hurt or he takes a loss? What happens at that stage? I don't know. That's a question that Prince Khalid will answer, and in due time, I'm sure that we'll be able to find out. In the December card, I anticipate by the end of the summer, early fall, and that'll give us an idea of what that landscape looks like.
Okay, so I see like Derek Chisora, he works alongside with Skill Challenge. And I said this yesterday on the show myself on Babatunde Ajay, that I could see, because Derek pretty adamant that he's not retiring for now, right? I could see a trilogy between Derek Chisora and Dillian White in Saudi Arabia. Do you think that could happen?
No. I mean, look, I shouldn't say no. Anything could happen. I mean, Derek Chisora could fight Logan Paul for all I know. I don't know. But we have something planned for Derek. Prince Khalid has a great relationship with Derek. Derek's, a very charismatic guy. Actually, that disruptive phone call that we got earlier in the interview, that was Derek calling me. So I got to call him back and yell at him while he wrote the interview.
Well, tell him that you're speaking with me. It'll be fine.
I will. But there is a fight that we're planning for Derek. And, again, in the fall, I think we can start announcing that. But Derek's like, look at. I told him, I said, man, why are you fighting? Like, you've done it. You had a great career. He loves to fight. The guy's a gym rat. Even when he's here on vacation with Prince Khalid, he's in the gym every day. He'll do 2 a days out here. He really is a very unique character. He'll do different. He trains 2-3 times a day. He watches what he eats. He trains like he's a 20-year-old, 25-year-old fighter still trying to make it, and I love that, and I can appreciate that. So he's fun to have around. He's a character. It's great having him around.
Okay. So, Mr. Amer Abdallah, it's been a plum pleasing pleasure having you on here. And this is the truth. Like I said earlier, that is very rare people in the sport. You are a very genuine person. Continue doing what you're doing, man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you as well. Keep pushing forward. And you know the rules. So before we go, can you just repeat after me, sir? Dream it, believe it, become it.
Dream it, believe it, become it.
Come on up. Peace, 2 fingers. It's been a plum pleasing pleasure having you. Thank you very much, Mr. Amer Abdallah, the director of boxing for Skill Challenge, which is in association with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Assalamu alaikum, bro. Thank you very much, brother.